I love making my reviews lighthearted and silly, you know that, but today we're talking Sound of Freedom. It's a much more serious topic, but is the movie good? Let's talk about it. What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, we like to talk about all things movies, television shows, and streaming. And today's film is Sound of Freedom. It came to theaters this past week. And in this video, I'm also going to tell you how you can see this movie for free. We'll get to that, but first, let's talk about the summary. And it's fairly easy to comprehend. This is the incredible true story of a former government agent turned vigilante who embarks on a dangerous mission to rescue hundreds of children from sex traffickers. This film is rated PG-13. That being said, there's a lot in here. Thematic content involving sex trafficking, violence, language, sexual references, drug references, smoking throughout. So much in here that made me think I was watching an R-rated movie, mostly because of what is depicted on screen. Now, they don't go into detail regarding the actual vile events that we see on screen. Thank God they don't. And I think for our sake and for everyone involved's sake, that's the best way to go about it. But there is a lot in here. So if you're taking your kids, I would say maybe they need to be 13 or older, maybe older than that, because there's a lot in this movie that made me just so emotional. Now, before I get into my thoughts and talk about some very uncomfortable things regarding this movie, but it's something that needs to be talked about, I want to be honest with you all and tell you that the people behind this movie, they reached out to me and said, is there a way that you can promote this film? And I told them I will very gladly do that, but you all know me. If I don't love the movie, I have to be honest with them and tell them. Thankfully, I have some really good thoughts regarding this film, so I wanted to tell you all that because so many people have paid it forward, continue to pay it forward, there's an opportunity to go out to the theater and see this movie for free. They are in partnership with so many theaters across the United States, and over 2 million tickets have been paid forward already, but the opportunity is still out there. If you guys want to go to that link, sign up for a chance at free tickets. If you're a subscriber of mine, if you like my videos, comment on my videos, that would mean a lot to me because I think this topic, what this movie is dealing with, is important, and I do believe it's worth going out and seeing it in a theater. And by the way, the goal of 2 million is all about the 2 million children that are trafficked every single year. So I think that was a great goal. They have already exceeded that, but the chance is still there. If you guys want to do that, that would be awesome. Now let's get into the actual review portion of the video. And so let's start with the studio, Angel Studios. I didn't know a lot about them. I had to look into it prior to the film. I just saw the trailer and was interested in the subject matter, in the material. So I looked into it, and they do lean in one direction politically, and I feel like some people are looking at that and just judging this movie based off of that. And to be honest with you, I don't think that's the way to go about it, because this film, at least on its surface, for the most part, maybe a scene or two in there, right? But for the most part, it's not a movie that leans one way or the other politically. It's a movie that deals with something that every single human on Earth should be concerned about, and that is human trafficking. I'm very aware. I have been aware for a while. It's a big issue, but it's not something that people talk about all that often, even though it should be talked about. It's not talked about that much. In this story, it's personal to me. It should be personal to everyone, not only because I have a daughter now, but because I worked with a place a few times called Hope's Place, and they take in abused children and work with them, right? That's something that happens in every country, in every state, in every city, and most towns. Now, whether we know about it or not, it's always happening around us. Children are being abused nonstop, and it's infuriating, but it's also something that should make you want to do something. It should cause for action to be taken, right? So you watch a movie about this that is not specifically that, but is all about human trafficking, specifically child trafficking, based on a true story about an operation that thankfully saved a lot of lives, is hopefully continuing to work on those lives, and hopefully those kids, they're in better situations now, not to spoil the film, but again, it is based on a true story, so in that way you know where it's going, but it has to go there, and it would be tragic to think about all of the opportunities that our government and other people have had to go in and save more kids in more situations, because it's happening all the time. But we get a perspective in this film of one situation where things inevitably turn out in a better way, right? But it starts out showcasing things that are gonna, it's going to break a lot of hearts. I dare you to watch this movie and not at least get a little emotional. Human trafficking is bad enough, but when you bring children into it, you know, those who can't fend for themselves, and for the most part, they don't really know what's going on. There's numerous cases in this movie where someone goes in at 6 years old and they are there until they're 15 years old or 16 years old. And that's That's a long, tragic, gut-wrenching time to know that that is the case. And this film, it shines a light on that without, like I said, leaning too far one way or the other. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. All that matters, the lives of these kids. And what we see in this film, it's not scattered, it's not unfocused. It is truly focused on the fact that this guy wants to go out and save those lives. And I thought that was beautiful, both from a filmmaking perspective. You know, the script knows exactly what it wants the movie to be about, and it is about that. Occasionally it goes off track, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But I do love the idea that their goal, their mission was clear at the beginning, and Jim Caviezel, who plays our lead character, our real-life person in Tim Ballard, who I believe chose Caviezel for that role, which is really cool. Man, he captures the spirit of someone who is so determined to do what it takes to save these lives, even if it means pushing aside his other responsibilities, his career, and, you know, it's going to hurt his family when it comes to money and insurance, all of those things. He's just saying, no, I have a mission, I have a goal, and I think what it was at the beginning of the film, you see him witness a few things. One thing in particular, when he's looking at a laptop screen, and first of all, I love the performance from Caviezel, not only in this scene, but all throughout the film. But as that progresses and builds up, you can see it start to become, you know, I'm going to do whatever it takes in this movie to make sure I get what I want. More importantly, I know that these kids are safe, and I love the fact that his wife was so supportive throughout the film. It's not somebody who's trying to say, well, you know, you've got responsibilities at home, and he does. That's very clear. But she said, you have to do this. It's so important that you do this. And again, the movie makes that clear. So I can love the message. I can love what this film is about. I love the idea that it's shining a light on something that, again, nobody talks about. And I don't know, I mean, we're talking about it right here, but there are other spaces that do not talk about child trafficking, and it should be talked about so much more because it's a big problem. That aside, from a filmmaking standpoint, it's focused. I think the performances are good. I love that they got Bill Camp in this movie. Bill Camp is so good. He provides that right-hand man next to Caviezel's Tim, and in the film, they're kind of creating this place for a bunch of really bad men to bring these children to, and they're setting up a trap of sorts. And they don't want everyone to know it's a trap because, again, there are more kids to save. But the way that that gets set up, I think some are going to watch this and say, well, the pacing is a little off when it is slowly building to that moment. And I kind of agree. I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't in awe of the pacing of this movie, specifically in the second act. I do think they could have, you know, moved their way towards that goal just a bit quicker. And that's looking at it from a film standpoint. But from a morality standpoint, it is important to see that build up and to see how terrible these men actually are. So when you start to take them down, it feels better. It feels more earned. And they're not making it feel like, for the most part, this big action blockbuster thriller where Jim Caviezel is playing this spy and he's on a mission and he has to do some things. Now, there is some shoehorned action in this film, and not that it didn't feel like it belonged, but I feel like it was solely there to build up the tension in a different way. And looking into the true story, not everything you see is fully true, but it does capture the essence of what actually went down. The only thing I feel like was tacked on was the mission at the end, which is a great mission, by the way. I love the payoff of that mission. But there were things about it that I wish they wouldn't have stylized it as much. That being said, it will provide entertainment for the audiences, and that will keep them on the edge of their seats, so that's always good. And I mentioned, it's not a big blockbuster action thriller. Well, it is in its own way a thriller. It is in its own way a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching film, and in that way, it feels like a horror movie at times. It's the worst type of horror movie. It's a horror movie that's true, because it's showcasing atrocities that are actually happening around the world. And it says it at the end of the movie, specifically in the United States, all the time. It says the United States is one of the biggest countries when it comes to that. So that should open up some eyes, right? And I guess the other big point is I could never watch this movie again, and it's nothing against the film at all. I thought this was quality from top to bottom, more specifically, quality with a lower budget. This movie did not have a big budget whatsoever. I think you could have doubled or tripled that budget, watched the film and said, yeah, I would believe that this was made for that. But with the minuscule budget that it was made for, like $14, $15 million, it's really incredible what they were able to do. It's more incredible to me that they were able to get the talent that they actually got, because across the board, adults and kids, I didn't think one performance in this film was bad. I think some of the dialogue and line delivery could have been considered over the top, but I dug the filmmaking here, and I was so impressed that they did this with what they were working with the entire time. And that's really cool to see. And the fact that Alejandro Monteverde did a nice job behind the camera, that adds a lot to it. So before I give you guys my score, thanks so much for watching. Again, if you want to go see this film in your area for free, pay it forward. There's a link in the description. Let me know in the comments if you're going to do that, or if you've seen this movie, if you want to see this movie, and why you believe it's such a great human story. Let me know all of that in the comments down below. And if you're not a subscriber and you want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. Sound of Freedom is a heartbreaking film that shines a light on the horrors of sex trafficking. This is a human story that had to be told, and the script does a nice job of handling the way they showcase the devastating moments. The dialogue doesn't always land, but the message is inspiring and important. And even with those more clunky moments and, like I said, some of the pacing issues, the experience is one that I believe is absolutely worth having with the crowd in the theater. Though you're going to have to pass around the tissues after the movie's over, because it's that kind of film. I was left with the same feeling I got from Prisoners, and that's another devastating movie that's handling more similar things, but in a more thrilling way. Regardless, Sound of Freedom is in theaters right now. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.